Hey everyone, this is Corey with Stafford's EDC, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Bestech Knives Tulip. This is an Ostap design, made by Bestech, obviously, and it is a folding kiridashi type of knife. It's a liner lock. In this case, this is 14C28N with G10 handles, and let's get into some size comparison and some specs. So it is a tiny knife, if you couldn't tell already. You have the Benchmade bug out here above it, and now the Victorinox Cadet, the 84mm model, coming in down below. And now your specs for this knife: you have a 4-inch overall length with a 1.5-inch blade. Blade stock thickness of 0.11 inches, which honestly, it doesn't seem that thick, and that's something I'd be interested to see how it measures up. I do have my calipers here, so why not take a quick measurement? I might have lied. I might not have my calipers right here. Thought I had them sitting here. Let me grab those really quick. Alright, got the calipers. We're going to make sure that is zeroed. And I don't believe that this is 0.11, just knowing what other blade stock is like. But I know, 0.1, which is almost shocking to see that they went with 0.1 when you have things like the Benchmade bug out, which are 0.09, which hopefully you can see. So an interesting choice there from Bestech to go with that blade thickness, but it is in 14C28N, if I did not say that already, with a flat grind, and for your handle length, you have 2.375 inches. Coming in really light as well, with a total weight of 1.4 ounces. So nice and lightweight, but certainly very tiny, just barely over that ounce and inch mark, with a 1.5-inch blade and 1.4 ounces. So this is a little knife that, depending on why you get it, you might really like it or you might really not. If you want something really small, snappy, and you don't really plan to use it, I think you could really enjoy this knife. It's a style that's pretty unique. It's a traditional Japanese style. Kiridashis are marking knives used for woodworking, things like that. It's certainly very comfortable to hold like a pen or pencil almost, and drag that tip along. It does work really well for those applications, but it's definitely not going to be as good as, say, a fixed version of this like they make traditionally. If you want this as a small carry option, I don't know if I can entirely recommend it, and I'm going to get into my thoughts on all the parts of the knife here in just a second, but it's got a place for somebody, but I don't think the majority of people are going to find a good use for this unless it's something like a dedicated box opener, or you're going to use it in a kiridashi style, and let's get into why. Now, first things first, I'm going to come right out of the gate with price. G10, 14C28N, really tiny, as I said, 4 inches overall when open, and they want $47.90 on Blade HQ for this, and it doesn't say there's an MSRP price, that just says our price, so it's, a $50 knife, and it's this tiny little thing. And yeah, 14C28N is a decent steel, and this is made okay, but I don't know, $50 just, that kind of turns me away from it right away. If it was $30 or something like that, I could maybe give it a little bit more benefit of the doubt, but after carrying this a little bit and seeing that price tag, I was shocked, to say the least. The next thing I want to get into is the pocket clip. This is one of the worst parts about this knife. It is just a really tiny clip. You can see there's not a lot of ramp to it. It was enough to get in some pockets, but not in others. It's definitely a hot spot because of how tiny this knife is. When this blade is open, which you can open a couple different ways, but it didn't engage the lock there. I feel that the tip of this right here, where that ramp is right at the base of my pointer finger. I mean, I can move up a little bit, but then I'm getting in more in this area opposed to that area. So it doesn't make too much of a difference, but you can get in some grips that are comfortable with it. But unless you're going to hold it like a pen to do marking, you're going to feel that clip basically however you hold it. It's just in the way. Pinch grip like this, it's the only place to grab, and it's jabbing me in the finger. So not really a great part. And like I said, it's a little pokey, and it just doesn't go in the pocket that well. It is very small as well, so if you're worried about this getting yanked out of a pocket, it does not have a long distance to travel before it is coming out of the pocket. Next thing is this flipper tab. It sticks up quite a lot. It doesn't really lend itself to being pulled like that. You can do it. It's a little awkward to position yourself, but it works much better as a thumb flipper, and definitely works good flipping it backwards. And you can see it hit my finger there. It's a little tough to, on such a small handle, to get positioning where you're not going to interfere with the opening or the closing. There, we got it open, and if you have dexterity issues, this might be a problem because you're having to pinch against your hand in this area and then roll your thumb back to get this deployed. Now, let's talk about the blade. The blade is very thin, as we said, with the blade stock thickness. It has a swedge going down it, which makes it really, really great for slicing. This edge on this flat grind comes nice and thin, and being thin overall, this ate through cardboard no problem. The only issue that this had with cardboard is that the blade's only 1.5 inches long, and the cutting edge, you lose about 1/8 of an inch. So that is something that is just tough to use if you're going to be breaking down any type of cardboard. Having only this much space, with any other knife, I'll grab the bug out here. You can see just how many of these fit along the edge of the bug out. 1, 2, and change. So you have the ability to have double the blade length, the cutting edge length here, and on paper, a little more than double the blade length. Whereas here you have this very short, though slicey blade that you're really kind of forced to use for push cutting. Now, going down through cardboard, if I had it propped up on the table here, that's not too bad because you're just pushing down, and you can really push that straight edge down and forward at the same time, which really lends itself to cutting cardboard. But when you are cutting, say, this way, when you want to push and pull the knife this way at the same time, in this kind of a motion, there's just no distance to travel, making this not the best for breaking down any type of cardboard, but I don't know if that's something you want to be doing with a knife this size. The other thing with this knife that I just can't stand is this liner lock, and just closing the knife in general. So closing this knife, you have to make sure that when you're engaging the liner lock, your middle finger is not too far back or too far up on the blade, because you will hit the flipper tab and not be able to open it all the way. Like that. That's pushing up against my finger, and that makes it uncomfortable with this, so you got to get out of the way. And when you finally clear, it's not the smoothest ride going up and down. Now, this is from the Black Widow Pass Around group, so I'm not taking this apart to clean it or anything, but I don't think that it's from grit, because I was the first recipient of these from the factory. So I'm not sure it's just if it's just gritty on the inside, or if that's just the action from what feels more like the strength of the lock holding this back from being any better in terms of action. It's really not favorable. And then fidgeting with this knife and going to close it can cause bodily harm. And where I come from with that is the mark's tiny now, but I do have a mark right there on my thumb where I stabbed myself closing this. What did I do? I went to turn it in my hand and was almost holding it like a normal knife and went for the liner lock and stabbed myself just like that. So that was not good. And then I was playing with it left-handed, and I went to close it, and a little bit of lack of dexterity and positioning, and I went to push it from the flipper tab like this, and I pushed it right into my palm right there. So it's just an awkward size to handle and control properly during opening and closing, and even during use. You're only going to get 2 fingers on this knife. Maybe you can squeeze in a third if you really choke up on it, but there's no reason to be holding a knife this small that deep in your hand. You're going to be using it in this kind of a pinch grip, probably on the pivot or up on the blade, and for that, it has its purposes, but this overall is not going to be something that I would recommend unless you have a very specific need for something like this. So that's going to be it from me today. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.